Three, two, one. I thought about doing that just moments ago off stage, and I think it went pretty well. You could do this, you could do the robot, you could actually do the Tin Man, and then really loosen up. How is everyone? How the heck are you? My name is Nathan Lyon. Welcome to Debbie's Dream Foundation, this sort of like cooking demo for all the lovely people out there. I'm one of these people that learns from other people around them. Um, from Arlington, Virginia, originally went to James Madison University, earned a health science degree with a public health minor, moved out here to California, where I completed a course to become a medical technician. Went to Le Cordon Bleu, worked with a bunch of farmers. I've been on television for about 20 years now, but all of that pales in comparison to the person that I think we're all here to see, really, which is Mary Eve Brown, clinical oncology dietitian specialist, John Hopkins Kimmel Cancer Center. She is the person, she is my beacon of hope and light to which I draw strength, happiness, joy, and information. Mary Eve Brown, how are you on the East Coast?
I am awesome. Awesome, chef. So happy to be
Word
here.
word has it we're wearing the same color. Is that right? I can't even see you.
I glad you got the memo. The
Okay.
memo. Yep.
I'm gonna go change to a brown shirt. I'll be right back. Okay.
No.
Today we're gonna be pretty busy. We're actually making five things today, so we're gonna cut to it. But before we do, I want to make sure that you out there, first of all, where is everyone watching from? I know that people watch from all around the world. I would love to hear where you're watching from, but I clearly can't read the computer that's over here to the right hand side. But the person that can do that, this voice.
Hello.
That is Sarah. And Sarah will convey your questions to both myself and also to Mary Eve Brown. So go ahead and type your questions in the chat box, and Sarah will make sure that she's on top of the different cameras so you can see things up close and center. Kick over to Mary Eve, answering questions that you may have for her. And then we'll go ahead and get started, shall we? I mean, there's
Well, I want to say because we have Pavani here from India, which is so
India.
excellent. Welcome.
What time is it in India? My goodness.
Be late.
It's gotta be.
We have Charlie from New Mexico,
Okay.
starting fourth
Okay.
line treatment next week, TG partial esophagus removal in 2022. Mary Eve is clapping.
Wow.
Welcome,
Amazing.
welcome.
Yay.
Yay. And then we have Debbie Dream Foundation.
Okay.
Chiming in from Chicago, Florida. We're in Los Angeles. Mary Eve's in the East Coast.
Yeah, so we're not all four corners, but pretty close to that whole thing. So we're all here. We're poised for greatness. Like I said, we're making five things. I am the youngest of three boys. I love to talk, but we do have to get this whole thing started. And oh, there we go. Right back near it. We were just in Boston for graduation. A little bit cooler up there. So we're going to sort of celebrate the moving away of, I guess you would say, winter into spring. Boy, in Austin, Texas, where we lived the last 7 years, it's already mid 90s, so I guess you can call that summer. So we're just going to celebrate all the different types of food we can enjoy out there with our friends and family. Um, and everything here that we're going to be working with, you can easily find at the grocery store or your local farmers market. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. First and foremost, let's go ahead and get started with chicken. Okay, some roasted chicken, whether you're grilling or whether you're going to use your oven. I like to use the broiler for this particular cut of chicken, if you will. What I have here is some chicken thighs. We're going to make some lemon thyme chicken thighs. And I like chicken thighs for numerous reasons, one of which they can really be cooked to a pretty high temperature, like 192, 193 degrees, and it's still really juicy and moist and tender. Now, Mary Eve, while I get some spices put together, like some thyme, lemon zest, salt, pepper, olive oil, to dredge these chicken thighs in, question for you, not just with food safety, because clearly 190 is more than safe, but is chicken thigh or chicken breast a little bit easier for a patient to digest, something with more high fat or lower fat? Question.
That is an awesome question. So thighs are going to have more fat in them than breast. And if you're in treatment and you're having nausea or reflux or any kind of GI thing going on, you're going to want to probably stick with the breast because it's lower in fat. The same thing if you're soon after surgery. Um, the breast is going to be easier to digest also because of the fat. But you need to make sure that, a breast can dry out pretty quickly if you overcook it. So cooking it to temperature 165, which we've talked about for a long time now, but then in a moist medium might be better, poaching or adding a gravy or something to it to make it softer. Because sometimes after surgery, you don't want anything sticking, if that makes any sense. So definitely if you're doing the breast, which I would recommend in treatment and post surgery, but then if that's not the case, a thigh is fine. But then just having a moist way to cook it is probably really, really important. I think people overcook it. So using a meat thermometer, which I know Jeff is all over, using a meat thermometer can really help you get that right temperature. Not there we are, not over and not under.
Excellent. Well, it's good to know. So for those of you that are going to go with chicken breast instead of chicken thighs, this is what I recommend you do. So chicken breast is a very poorly designed piece of protein because what happens is if you think of it from the side, it's almost like a teardrop where it starts from the tip and it goes up and it kind of rounds like a teardrop. So you have a thicker part and it kind of tails off to the end. So you can do one of two things to make sure you don't overcook that tip portion or undercook the thickest portion. The easiest thing to do is to sandwich it between two pieces of parchment paper, or plastic film, and just take a mallet back of a pan and smash it to where it's the same thickness. That's called paillard. You can also take your knife and kind of cut halfway through the teardrop portion and then just open it up like a book so that everything is more uniform as far as the size. So that's a way to make sure you still have a juicy, delicious chicken breast. We're going with chicken thighs, like I said today. And the same thing when you go out and use the grill, don't be afraid to go ahead and get some char over that nice high heat and then move it off to a little bit more gentle heat, as Mary Eve Brown was saying, so you don't overcook it.
We have Sonia here from Florida. Welcome, Sonia. And I have a question for Mary Eve. This is from a caregiver. My sister is weeks out of treatment and surgery and just seems she is not getting any stronger. She spends much of the day in bed on the couch. How can we help her regain her strength and energy?
Okay, great question. I have so many thoughts running about my head right now. So I think one thing is to make sure to check in mental health wise. Um, Sometimes when people are in treatment, there's a lot of attention, a lot of touch is what I call it, that you've got people checking in with you and making sure everything is okay. And then same thing through surgery and then afterwards. And it's kind of like a letdown or a fall, which kind of sounds weird, but you're kind of out there trying to figure out your new normal. I think one, connecting with Debbie's Dream Foundation, maybe as a support, to reach out to others who may be experiencing the same thing and get some ideas from somebody who's actually been through it. Number one. Number two, of course, is nutrition. Make sure that that you're drinking enough fluids and you're getting the protein in. But sometimes caregiver expectations can be very different than the patient's expectations. So, the caregiver is saying, okay, we're done. You went through treatment. You had surgery. Like, get on with it. Get up. And the patient's kind of like, I'm still feeling pretty punk. Like, I just need to take it easy. Journaling can sometimes help with that, like keeping track with what you're eating, what you're drinking, but also what you're doing in the day and have maybe setting goals like, okay, well, let's get up and get a shower today. It can be really small, right? It doesn't need to be a big thing. But then over time, if you go back and look through the journal, you see that, oh, she is making improvements. We are getting into the right place. So one, make sure mental health. Two, make sure hydration is there, protein is there, and then setting little goals. We do that with fatigue people a lot. Sometimes people think, I'm so tired, I shouldn't move. But actually, once you get up and you start moving, you have less fatigue. So, but it's got to be baby steps in the beginning. Like, let's get up and let's walk around, the house, or just small little goals to get back.
I love the idea of journaling, Mary Eve, because when I was back at James Madison University for the nutrition background that I have, the professor was saying, we have a tendency to eat things that we sort of forget about because a lot of times
Mhm.
eating, you just have so many
Mindless.
things going on in your day that as you're eating, you kind of forget. I mean, I'm so bad at that because as the youngest of three, my brothers would always, they're much larger than me, so we'd always eat very quickly. So I'm trying to get better at that. But I remember one time I was having dinner with my mom out here in California, and I remember eating so whatever I ate. My mom looks at me and she says, "Don't look at your plate. What did you just eat?" I go, "I don't know." So just being cognizant and writing things down and realizing what you've had or your day, it's just a little bit easier to sort of focus on what you've done throughout the day and throughout the week. And it's wonderful, as you said, to be able to look back and see your progress as you flip through your journal. I think that's wonderful. Speaking of flipping
Mindless.
back, let's flip back to these chicken thighs. So I have what you saw me do: lemon zest, thyme. Those are two essential oils that sort of flavor everything. I had a little olive oil. That's sort of the whole thing that allows all those flavors to merge. A little salt and pepper. I have the broiler on. Okay, and depending upon the strength of your broiler, my rack is the highest rack. And then as Mary Eve was saying, I have my digital thermometer. I'm going to go ahead and broil this for about 5 minutes till it gets a little color. I'm going to flip them and then broil it for about 5 to 7 minutes on both sides, and that's done. So it's actually a really wonderful way of getting, plenty of protein almost passively. Once it's in here, you can pretty much forget about it, right? So again, all this is in real time. I guarantee that you could probably make all these things much faster than what I'm doing today because you can sort of focus and enjoy the whole process, right? So next up is pasta. I'm gonna make a pasta dish. I already have my pasta water boiling. Now this is a really interesting thing, Mary Eve, because one of our friends is gluten intolerant, so she has the alternative instead of whole wheat or wheat pastas. She'll have the non-gluten pastas on offer. So as far as digestion, is it easier for a patient to have a wheat flour, like a durum wheat flour pasta, or the alternative pastas, which are kind of cool, which is like brown rice and such like that? Can you speak a little bit to different types of pastas that patients can enjoy?
Yeah, so your white pasta is going to be the easiest to digest. But if I have a patient who's doing pretty good, I really like the alternative ones. I like red lentil pasta or chickpea pasta because they have protein in them. So if I have somebody who's having a hard time with protein, can we try one of these pastas that's going to give you good protein? But the white pasta is really the easiest to digest. I sometimes tell people that you're going to not be happy with me, chef, but al dente is what you hear. I want them to overcook it a bit to make it
Great.
softer. Um,
That's great.
and then the other sometimes I do with people is I have them do a one pot. So instead of boiling and then draining, boiling in like a bone broth or something that's going to give, flavor, but also it's going to give more protein because it's going to suck up that bone broth.
All right.
Debbie Dream's asking it what you think of rice pastas. Is it a good idea or not good idea? Like the brown rice pasta.
So it depends on the fiber. It's going to depend on where you are and how you're feeling. If you're not having anything gut wise, go for it. If you've got any upset tummy or soon after surgery or any of that stuff, that's going to be harder to digest. So fiber, where it's fabulous for us, and we all need to have fiber in our diet, um, it's hard. It slows down gastric emptying. So if you're queasy and you put fiber in there, it's more likely you're going to feel pretty sick.
Hmm.
So it just depends on what your gut's doing. And
Mhm.
this is kind of fascinating, but certain cancers are being more prevalent in younger populations, and they're doing this huge study. And one of the preliminary things that's coming out is that these young people who have these certain gut cancers, when they do like histories on them, they as children did not eat much fiber. And they think there's a possibility that there's a particular strain of microbiome that is gut cancer preventative, but it comes with fiber. And I just think that's fascinating. So if you have children or grandchildren, make sure that they are eating fibrous foods because in the long term, we think that that may be cancer preventative, which I got goosebumps about that.
Yeah. I mean,
Goosebumps.
that I
Yeah.
mean that does make sense. Like I grew up, I'm 54, so I'm the youngest of three boys, and my mom was health nuts. One of the things that Sarah just endlessly teases me about because like one day she came home and she was like, try this chocolate. And we tried it and it was carob. The carob is not chocolate. It was like, what are you thinking? But we were part of the Moosewood cookbook. We couldn't afford to go to restaurants, and so we would shop, at food co-ops and farmers markets, and I'm sort of a product of my environment, so I consider myself very fortunate to have not had a lot of money growing up. How's that? Kind of weird, but we had plenty of fiber. Don't get me wrong. It was everything we had was we were putting these choppers to work. It was a lot of
Yeah.
vegetables.
It's
Okay, well that's good to know.
yeah,
I
really,
think,
really. I have so many people in their late 20s and 30s now as patients. And I'm like, and they keep saying it's environment, it's environment. I'm thinking, look at our food supply, what we feed ourselves, right? That's the key to it.
yeah,
So we should be getting like 20 to 30 grams of fiber a day. Most Americans, it's half that amount. So if you can
yeah,
start getting some fiber in, if you can, particularly if you have children and grandchildren, no brainer, no brainer.
yeah.
And carob, no one eats carob.
Thank you, Mom. Are you watching this? You heard
I
her.
I thought you were going to say she. So one of the things that I tried to do with my children was to put black beans in their brownies.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, they don't watch me, so they don't know this, but yeah.
You snuck it in. We have Gabrielle who joined us from Wisconsin. Hello. Berta from Boston. Welcome.
Just left Boston.
Welcome,
Beautiful.
welcome. Well, one of the things that I grew up eating was pesto because my dad had a garden in Texas and the only thing that grew was basil, basically.
No.
So
And here we are.
it was pesto on everything all the time.
Yeah.
And today Nathan's gonna make some pesto again.
Next semester. It's funny actually because sometimes we'll make some pizzas with pesto here, and then Sarah has it's sort of a triggering word for her because growing up, her dad, who loved to cook, would just focus on one thing. So she would have pesto for literally months and pizza for months. And one of the things that Sarah teases me about is that she would have to say to her dad, "Dad, can we please not have pizza tonight?" What kid says that?
That.
I know.
So,
And then we have Gretchen, welcome from New York.
welcome, Gretchen. The thing about growing your own herbs, I'm a big advocate for that, kind of getting your fingers back into the earth. Um, Basil is one of the really easy things to grow, and in fact, if you have a farmer's market and you can get them in really fresh bunches, this is
Yep.
what I like to do. Take a couple of them, put it in water, and they will sprout roots, and you can just go ahead and plant yourself a brand new basil plant. Okay.
You've just gotta flip your chicken.
All right, great. So Sarah says we're about halfway, 5 to 6 minutes. We're going to flip the chicken. Let me show you what it looks like right now.
Well, DDF also says zucchini is also good to hide in brownies. I also have a cookie kid.
Zucchini.
That's a good one.
I mean,
You just gotta get all the water out of it, because otherwise it's kind of like,
Oh, yeah.
that's true. And zucchini, being one of these things, we're not quite there. I think zucchini is one of my triggering things, only because my grandfather used to grow a lot of it, and it could start this big, and you turn around to say something, and you turn back around, and it's like this big. They just grow so darn fast. All right, so this is going back in. This chicken is literally halfway done. It is, again, using only the broiler. So it's almost like when you have your grill outside and the heat's coming from one side, I could put the back of my hand on whatever you're cooking and it's not going to be hot. Once you close it, it's more like an oven. So we're just simulating a grill by using your broiler, which is just heating from one side, flip the chicken, another 5 minutes, and we're good to go. Okay? So let me show you what we got going here. I have a fair amount of basil. Yeah, basil pesto. Now, depending upon how you feel about nuts, which I think we do know how you feel, Mary Eve, about pine nuts. This is a pine nut free or a nut free pesto, and we've
Oh.
tested it numerous times, and it's really very good.
Wow.
You may ding me on a few of these things like olive oil, but I don't want to spoil it for the viewers. I don't want to spoil it for myself. But we're going to sort of mitigate the use of olive oil by adding a little bit of water. A lot of people, when they make homemade mayonnaise, for example, or pesto, they don't add water, and there's nothing for that oil to get into. So you add a little bit of water as we go, it sort of spreads out, relaxes, and then it won't get so gloppy and quite so thick. And also, there's at least 2 packed cups of basil in here.
And you're not gonna use garlic, right?
And I'm not using garlic either.
Wow. Hey, chef, I want to ask you a question. Every time I make pesto, it's bitter.
Bitter. Okay.
So
That's a great question. That is because when you whip olive oil at a very high speed, olive oil gets pretty bitter. So we're going to actually mix this in the food processor first, or blender, with some water, pulverize that until where it's almost completely thinned out to the best of our ability. Then we'll add the olive oil just to bring the whole thing together.
Okay.
Okay. So think about like mortar and pestle in Italy. They just do that with the basil and a little bit of salt. They don't even add oil. They just mush the heck out of it until it's almost a paste. Then they add the olive oil at the end.
Okay. Well, and also I found that there's certain olive oils that oxidize more than others.
There we go.
In our experimentation of making pesto.
And please, everybody grow herbs. They're like weeds. You don't need I do mine in pots. They need a sunny place so you can move a pot around. And they're deliciousness. The other day, I'm also growing lettuce in a pot, and I was like eating the lettuce, and my husband yells out the window, the squirrel was in there earlier, right? And I'm like, oh, no, I don't. Because I wasn't washing it. I was just eating it.
Well, it's the flavor.
The squirrel. I'm like, okay.
Well, so Nathan's going to grate some Parmesan and then blend that up. But while he's doing that, I'm going to ask Mary Eve another question. This is from a patient. I've started chemotherapy for my gastric cancer. Not sure if this is common, but I am really having a hard time eating because foods do not taste right. Any tips?
Yeah. So a lot of the chemotherapies affect taste buds. And taste is, again, fascinating to me. So a taste bud picks up a sensation: sour, salt, bitter, sweet. It's also umami, whatever you say that. It's kind of trying to find the taste. And so food is very complex, right? So food has all these different tastes in them. And if they're not picking up everything, you're eating something, you're like, this tastes not right. It's because you're not picking up whatever that sensation is. So if you can try different things and then figure out which taste profile is the most appealing. It may not be right, but what's most appealing? So if I'm eating something and I'm like, oh, I'm getting a little bit of sweet with that, well, maybe then I try to add sweet things to make them more appealing. Can I eat a piece of fruit at the same time I'm eating? Or applesauce? Or can I add a jam to something? Can I add jelly to something? Can I put a honey on something? That may help then balance it, but then also the opposite of that. So if I'm eating something and it's like I have sugar in my mouth where it's a turkey sandwich and I shouldn't be tasting sugar, the opposite of that would be acid. So adding something that would give a little bit of an acid undertone to it, a tomato, or, a pickle or something to see if you can then bring it back into balance. The other thing that I really encourage my people to do is to do baking soda salt rinses before they eat to clean their palate. So it's 2 cups of warm water, teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and you just kind of swish and gargle and spit. You don't want to swallow it, but before you eat to clean your palate. But yeah, just look at food in a different way. In that, okay, what am I tasting? What's most appealing, and try to go down that path of whatever that is. The other thing that can sometimes happen is none of them are picking up anything. So a lot of times they'll say I'm eating, but it's like cardboard. Like I don't even get anything. Well, if you add something that's very flavorful to it, like a pesto or a condiment of some kind, that then will elevate the flavor of what you're eating and maybe make it more enjoyable. And the thing about a pesto or a condiment, they can live in the refrigerator and you can just pull them out and try them with different things. It's not a lot more work to what you're already doing.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mary Eve.
That's amazing.
Such helpful tips.
First of all, thank you all for asking questions. You all ask questions that I wouldn't think about, and then it makes me a better chef. It makes me a better designer of these different recipes. And Mary Eve is such a vast, like deep well of information. So it helps me sort of sculpt things so that when you send messages via Instagram and such, we can answer these questions together.
And then I have another question from
Okay.
Kavani. What about digesting cheese without stomach dairy? Without stomach dairy too. It's tough for me to digest milk curds.
Milk curds, cottage cheese. So lactose is the sugar that's in milk, and many people don't have the enzyme lactase to digest it. And if you don't have it, it can make you feel pretty sick. It can make you get belly pain and nausea and diarrhea. And it's a large percentage of adults that are lactase insufficient. You may have some production, but not enough. For example, I can eat yogurt, which is low lactose because the bacteria actually feed on the lactose. But then I can do that. But if I drink a glass of milk, I don't have enough of the enzyme to digest what I've just drank. Cottage cheese is high. Hard cheeses are low. But there's a couple of things. You can do lactose-free things, or you can actually buy lactase enzyme over the counter and pop one before you're going to do a dairy, and then it digests that lactose that's in it.
That's cool.
I'm glad you talked about this because we, amongst the other things we have yet to get to, one of which will include dairy. And then I'm going to go ahead and save a couple questions for you when it comes to that.
And then just going back to your all of your tips, Mary Eve, Charlie said, I journaled to document what worked and what did not, so I can go back to it later. If I liked it or avoid it. It's not good. I like the rinse idea.
Awesome, Charlie.
Yeah.
That is great. So I went ahead and just took your advice like on the fly, Mary Eve. I went ahead and cooked this pasta about 2 minutes longer. It still has quite a bit of spring to it. So I think you and I have come up with a lovely compromise as far as not al dente, but not overcooked. So we're right in that sweet spot. So it's easier to digest and the texture is still really lovely. So what I like to do is you can either, I think I'm a big fan of one of these things where I just scoop the pasta out, or you can pour the pasta in a colander and reserve some of that pasta water. There is some starch in that pasta water to sort of thin out this pesto, but we can just go ahead and do this on the fly. So I'm going to add this to the still warm pasta. If it's too thick, like I said, there is still some starch on the outside of the pasta, and I can always thin that out with some of the pasta water because I did use a fair amount of water. Mary Eve, question about salt. There is some salt that's in the pesto just because of the Parmesan. Not too much, but there is some. And I usually heavily salt the pasta water. Today I did not, knowing that the pasta is going to be covered with this pesto. Is there some sort of limit for a patient to be worrying about with their sodium intake?
That's an awesome question. So if you have any swelling, and what I mean by that is it could be abdominal swelling, which is called ascites, or leg swelling, which is called edema. We don't want you to have a high salt diet just because that would work not great with trying to get rid of that fluid. If you don't, or if you have high blood pressure, you probably want to watch your sodium. It's about 2,000 milligrams a day or 2 grams. And you can get that through oral diet without using the salt shaker. But if you don't have any of those things going on, you don't need to sodium restrict. I mean, everybody should be about between 2 grams a day of sodium. If you don't eat processed foods or use a salt shaker, you're probably there because foods have sodium in them naturally. That being said, there are a couple of the treatments that we do use in chemotherapy that can waste your sodium. And your doctor and team are probably checking on that. But dietary sodium and serum sodium have a very weak relationship. So even if your sodium is low, we don't tell you really to use like the salt shaker more so because of that relationship is not direct. Sometimes people think, oh, my sodium is low, so I should like really use the salt shaker. It's like, it's not going to bring it up to a normal level just by that measure. So that's a complex answer. Sorry.
It's a good answer. From a chef's perspective, one of the things that I always recommend people do is switch from table salt or iodized salt. I know that iodine and iodized salt, it does play an important role with nutrition, but as far as salt intake, I always season with kosher salt because kosher salt it's a larger grain of salt. So for example, if you want to cook my recipes and I say, let's say a quarter teaspoon kosher salt and you're using quarter teaspoon iodized salt, you're using 2.5 times more sodium per volume than I want you to. So that's also something when you can keep in mind as you're cooking different types of foods. If you're watching your sodium intake, just know that just that one tiny thing, switching from one type of salt to another, can make a huge difference in your sodium intake. Okay. So that's and plus the cool thing about when you use kosher salt, you can do one of these cool chef things. You can like do one of those when you're seasoning from way up. Iodized salt is so small, it's like sand, so it's very difficult to pinch and control in your fingers. Okay? So the first dish is done. We have this fresh pesto that we put over top of the slightly overcooked but still undercooked pasta. Sweet spot right in there. This is the seasoned chicken thigh that we broiled. We put a little fresh lemon zest, some fresh thyme, olive oil, salt, and pepper, broiled it. It took almost no time. Really, when we're thinking about it, all this happened quite rapidly. Now, I do want to say that I served this chicken thigh, which is on the smaller side. Because Mary Eve, I know that you don't want to serve a patient a really massive amount of food because it's a little bit easier to visually understand what a serving size is when things are smaller. But you also notice I didn't slice the chicken just yet. Any type of protein you do, maybe with the exception of fish, like chicken or pork, beef, anything like that, if you bring it right out of the oven and slice it right away, all the juices and deliciousness goes all over the cutting board. So if I wanted to serve this and slice it, I would wait just a couple more minutes, then I would slice it and then just go ahead and serve it together like that. Leftover chicken works really well with really delicate greens for your salad or an herb salad, something really light like that. But it's a wonderful source of protein to have in your fridge at any time you want it. All right, so the first course is down. Good. All right. So we have lemon thyme chicken thighs. Next thing up is a soup. This is a carrot coriander soup with cilantro. If I said the word cilantro and you have a tick, that's because you probably don't like cilantro. Please don't go away. I won't even show you cilantro if you're one of those people. Okay. So that'll make it really easy. I have a little pot right here. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. You can use whatever oil that Mary Eve would recommend, maybe avocado oil. Is there a different oil that you would recommend for just this blooming of the spices, Mary Eve?
If it's going to be a high heat, I wouldn't use olive oil. I would
Okay.
use avocado. But if
Okay.
it's not going to go to a high heat, no worries. You don't
Okay.
want to smoke. That's what you don't want, the ripple smoke is what you don't want.
Perfect. So we're going to go just to where it shimmers just a little bit. You actually don't have to do this particular step, but it actually does help a little bit. It's called blooming. So when you have spices, that are ground or whole spices, if you heat them up a little bit, it just sort of like loosens them up. It allows their volatility to sort of open up a little bit. And you can smell it. Same with garlic and things like that. When you cook garlic a little bit, you can smell a little bit more. So I'm going to add this just a little bit, and it already is up to a pretty good temperature. Now, coriander, if you're not familiar with coriander, it's a very floral spice. I love it. Coriander and cumin, they work together, but I think coriander, for just coriander's sake, is really good with this. There are 3 different flavors we're going with this. Coriander, carrots, of course. We're going to thicken it with some potato, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions about potatoes in just a bit. And then butter. Ooh, how do we feel about butter? We don't have to add it at the end, but butter is one of those things where you think about, growing up, at least for me for Thanksgiving, and you have the carrots that are roasted, a little bit of butter and some spice over the top. Chef's kiss from Virginia. Kisses?
Yeah, I mean, what I say about butter is use it in the right way where you're going to taste it.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be on a topper, which is what you're doing, perfect.
Okay.
The other day I was pulled out one of my grandmother's recipes and it was oleo.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
What?
What's oleo?
It is a good question. I mean, what is it?
I think it's margarine, right?
Just,
don't know.
it's probably hydrogenated oil.
Something we should not put in our bodies.
Something we should not put in our bodies. I remember growing up as a little kid, my grandmother, I learned to cook from my grandmother and my mom, but they all worked full time. But I would go to my grandmother's house and I would learn to cook from her. And she would make these Buckeyes, like Ohio State Buckeyes. And she would take paraffin wax, and melt it with the chocolate and then dip the balls of peanut butter.
Wait, Jeff, this explains a lot about you now. I get it.
Thank you.
There's certain parts of my brain where the synapses are clogged with paraffin wax.
I feel seen. While Nathan gets going on the peeling the carrots, Mary Eve, a question from a patient, which is, how can I overcome cold sensitivity to food?
Oh, so that is also another side effect of chemotherapy. Overcome it. So
Can you explain what that is?
yeah, okay. One of the chemotherapies that we use a lot is called oxaliplatin. And it gives nerve ending stimulation and problems. And it can affect the mouth, which is really strange. So some people get lockjaw. What the patients tell me is that it feels like they're swallowing knives or pins. So when you have like that pin needle sensation, that can happen in your mouth and throat. Also, you like with hands, like you can't touch the cold spigot. You can't go into the refrigerator. You can't, pick up a cold cup. So we only want it to last no more than 5 days, like 3 to 5 days. If you're having it longer than that, that's a discussion with your healthcare team. So you have to do things that are room temperature or warm. And one of the big things is, and we don't think about this, is we just pick up a cup and we, put ice in it and, drink it. Having room temperature beverages available, either in the pantry or on your counter, that are individual servings. That way you can just go and open it. Yeah, so it's one of the side effects of one of the chemotherapies that we give, in particular for gut cancers, for this disease. So if you're having it longer than 5 days, to overcome it, it's really to talk to the healthcare team, because the dose may need to be adjusted of it.
Incredible.
So many things. So many things. So many
many
things.
So many things. Yeah, I mean, it's just that's pretty intense. Mostly if you're a love of ice cream, it's gonna be a rough. It's gonna be a rough go.
This has been years ago. I had a patient and we were educating him about, staying away from cold and da 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 da. Not that we didn't know he had a frozen yogurt shop, and he left infusion, went to his shop, and he decided to test himself.
Oh no.
He had lockjaw for 3 days. We actually had to admit him into the hospital because he literally could not open his mouth. So it's yeah.
On that note,
How about some hot soup?
how about some hot soup? Well said. Great segue. Don't gesture with a chef's knife. Okay, so what you've seen me did thus far is I did say it is a carrot coriander soup with cilantro, or it's a carrot coriander soup without cilantro. The carrots are the main thing. This orange color I know is really healthy. It's lovely. It's delicious. I did peel these carrots. We did talk about peeling vegetables prior. But I did want to introduce you, Mary Eve, to a question. In this case, we have a Yukon Gold, which is kind of light yellow. But here, Sarah and I went to our local farmer's market in Hollywood. A buddy of ours is a farmer, and he brings this variety of potato, which is quite yellow. This, I think, is more gold than this, if you can see that.
What is that? What is it? What's the other?
A potato called a magic myrna.
A magic myrna actually is from Alaska, of all things. Isn't that wild? But it's really yellow.
It's really flavorful.
So when you make this soup, because you have the carrot, right, the beta carotene of the carrot, or you call it that, and then you find these really lovely yellow potatoes. The carrot itself is vibrant. It is beautiful. It's like a lion's mane. It's gorgeous. So is there a benefit to finding or seeking out potatoes you wouldn't normally consume, or is one color healthier to a patient than other colors of potato? Because this is just a thickener for us.
This is awesome. So in my head, I'm thinking, why aren't you using purple and white carrots? So yeah, So different colors of vegetables give different phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are anti-inflammatory and antioxidants that protect cell from damage. So when you are looking at something, the more color you can get in there, the more different phytonutrients you're going to get. So yes, if you find like a purple yam or a purple carrot or a purple potato, using those are going to get you different than using yellow or white or orange. So if you can get all those colors in there, that is a highly antioxidant, anti-inflammatory soup.
Okay. That's good to know. I think one of the things, sort of reflecting back to when I was in college, one of the things we would talk about is, eating the rainbow, as you're referring to. And also one of the things that the professor asked, and she said, when you see a commercial for some type of food, chances are that commercial for that food is not going to be very good for you. I have yet to see a lot of commercials for farmers markets or a lot of organic types of produce. Usually, most of the things you see commercials for are packaged or highly processed at best. So she said, if you see a commercial for a type of food, you probably don't want to eat it.
I love it.
And I've carried that with me ever since.
I love it.
I mean, billboards are for Coke and all those different types of things, but you'll never see a billboard for this specific type of
No.
golden yellow potato. Okay.
Yeah. And so I also say if it's grown from the planet, yay. If it comes from a plant factory, no.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say nay.
Nay.
Yay and nay.
Nay.
Sarah goes, oh, okay. Just to round that whole thing out. Okay, it's the paraffin. It's the paraffin brain. It's a real thing.
Welcome, Elizabeth. Hello from New York.
Oh, fantastic. Welcome, Elizabeth. You were just in time. Well, New York's got to be at least a little bit cool. You're just in time for a coriander carrot soup. All I've done thus far is a little bit of olive oil, some coriander. I bloomed those spices just over some medium heat. You watched me put some peeled carrots and peeled potatoes. I know we peel pretty much everything, Mary Eve, but if you have a new potato, like a super airy thin skin, is there any benefit living or leaving that super thin skin on by chance?
Again, it goes back to kind of what we were just talking about, is if you've got digestive problems, you want to skin everything. If you don't, just scrub it really well. You don't probably have to peel. So it's going to be from person to person what their digestion is doing.
Okay. I mean, it was almost a trick question. I kind of knew the answer. You and I, we text each other at night, jokes, see what's going on. But it's also important to know because something that small can make quite a large difference in a person's digestibility.
Yeah.
Flavor. Let's talk about flavor, okay? I am a big advocate of Better Than Bouillon, this particular company. I get no money. They don't send me anything. They don't know I exist, to be quite honest. I just find it Better Than Bouillon. They make organic as well. This one's organic chicken base. They have vegetable base, beef base, everything you can think of. The reason why I like it is this is pretty easy to carry around, or it's easy to find in your grocery store and also in your refrigerator. I'm not a fan of those big box stocks unless we're talking about the bone broth. Then I'm all about it. It's usually in the refrigerated section, or make your own. That sounds great. But when you saw me pour water inside the pot, right, with the potatoes and the carrots, I just pour the water and there's no need for me to put this in and stir it around and dirty this thing up. I can put this away right now, just to make it a little more simple on the chef, less cleanup. And then I can just go ahead and add the stock and stir it around and you're good to go. Bob's your uncle, right? You're good to go. And there's a lot of flavor in there. You can actually add or subtract whatever flavor you want. And I like the flavor of this. If you like your box stock, let me know. Send Sarah a little message. And if you really like it, tell me you like it enough to pour yourself a little glass at night just to have a little sip of stock. Chances are you don't. Just curious. Give it a shot, okay? Better Than Bouillon. There we go. Have you tried that, Mary Eve, Better Than Bouillon? Or are you
I do. I use the vegetable one. I
Okay.
use the red chicken one.
Fantastic.
And Chef, you turned me on to that because I didn't do that before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something about watching people grab those box stocks and they're just like this walking through the grocery store. It's just like I mean, if you're working out, if that's part of your workout, then you're good to go. Okay. So let me add some supporters of this particular soup. We've already used thyme. I have more thyme here. You don't have to pick it if you don't want to when it comes to a soup. If you have a big gangly thing of thyme, it's like 5 or 6 little stems. Just take that whole thing and throw it in the soup. There's no need to pick it into little tiny pieces because at the end, before we blend this, you can simply remove that gangly thing of thyme, that bush of thyme, and just put that in the compost. I have thyme here. I went ahead and picked it last night, watching a little television with our pup. I'm going to add some thyme in there. And also a bay leaf. It's funny because bay leaf comes from a tree, sometimes a very, very large tree, bay laurel tree. If you happen to have one in your neighborhood, maybe in your front yard, you don't know about it, that is now your source of bay leaves. Okay? You can just raid your neighbor's bay laurel tree, grab a branch, and you're good for the next year. This goes in as well.
So
Okay?
then while that's boiling,
Yep.
simmering,
Yep.
set us up for your next dish, and then I'm gonna ask Mary the question.
Okay, sounds great.
Maybe your smoothie will be a good one.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to bring that to a simmer. Once it comes to a simmer, we're just going to cook it until the vegetables are cooked through. It's great because we're not draining the stock off of that. So all those water-soluble vitamins and nutrients are going to stay in the soup that we're going to blend. Okay, so that's also important to know. Once it's nice and soft, we can blend that. But let me sort of like move this whole thing over to a smoothie that we're going to make. And Mary Eve, go ahead and take away that question.
Okay, well, let me ask. Let me answer. All right, while you work on your smoothie, question, Mary Eve, from a patient. After months of chemotherapy, radiation, partial gastrectomy, and more chemotherapy, I am finally, NED, no evidence of disease, which is wonderful. But I do not want to cook anymore. I'm a foodie and always enjoyed cooking. Will that get better?
That's a great question. Sometimes treatment can be up to a year. It can be chemotherapy, it can be radiation, and then surgery, and then, more chemotherapy, which can really turn you off to food if things happen that you didn't want to eat anymore. I think the good news is it'll get better. But it's going to take time. And so what I tell my people, as long as you were in treatment, that's about your recovery time out. So if it's been 6 months, it's going to be 6 months out. Things are going to start getting better after that 6 months. So give it time. But maybe Chef has ideas about this too. So think of things differently. Go to your farmer's market. Support your local agriculture. I think it's huge. But also, it's just getting you in the environment of happy people with plants, right? So happy. Maybe try a cuisine that you hadn't tried before. Like, I think we have somebody from India. So I wasn't really, into Indian food. Maybe I try a little bit of that. So switch it up, but give yourself grace of time to recover. And if you don't want to cook, right, you could have someone else cook for you. So that way you're not spending the time in the cooking, but you're still, maybe enjoying more so the eating. Look into recipes that are quick and easy. Chef, you blow my mind every time we're together. I never thought of using my broiler to cook. Like that just was like, to me, like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. And look how easy that was. And it was like 15 minutes, right? Yeah. And you could cook a whole bunch of them off and then store them and pull them out later, like you said, to put on a salad or make a chicken salad or add to a soup. So think of things differently, but give yourself grace of time of recovery.
Yeah, no, I agree. And depending upon also the thing that sort of slows me down as a chef and doesn't inspire me as much is the exact same vegetables and fruits, the exact same ones. That's why going to the farmer's market, as you had mentioned, Mary Eve, is a source of inspiration. It's almost like saying when someone laughs, like really has a good laugh, it's very contagious and you kind of find yourself smiling and laughing. I think the farmer's market is just surrounded by people that just love food so much that they may sort of like put you on a new path of love for food or trying a new method of preparation you haven't tried before. Like I said, I grew up in the 70s in Arlington, Virginia. My mom and everybody's parents used to boil the bejiggers out of their Brussels sprouts, and I would walk home from school and the kitchen would just smell like farts. It was just there, I said it. And now people roast it at a high temperature, and now it's one of my favorite vegetables. So same vegetable, different preparation, it can make a difference. Okay. So
Yep.
what I did in a very short period of time, another thing, I'm sure you've used your blender. You've also used your immersion wand, Mary Eve, for soups, for blending things. This is a really simple smoothie. Okay, so we had some smooth peanut butter, some cocoa powder, yogurt. I know there are alternative yogurts out there. I used some whole milk as well, a little bit of vanilla extract, and some protein powder. If you want to use protein powder and a touch of ice, blended this whole thing up with a banana, and you're good to go. It's like a lot of calories, some really good flavor. How do you feel about alternative yogurts as well, Mary Eve, as far as digestion? This is cow. I know there's sheep and all their other types of yogurts out there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think the key is if you're going to buy an alternative yogurt is to make sure that it has the protein in it. Um, but yeah, I like them as well. The other thing I'm going to say is that dry milk is protein powder. So if you can do dairy, doing the dry milk is a less expensive way to get more protein into things. And but it does have lactose in it, so you have to keep that in mind. But I dry milk powder can go a long way in adding protein to things without affecting the flavor of it. Sometimes protein powders come with a flavor that may be off-putting. Also, sometimes protein powders, particularly when people have like the taste sensitivities and all that kind of stuff, you're picking up on the grit of it, whereas dry milk powder will dissolve easier into things. You can add it to hot cereal. You can definitely double your protein with adding it to milk. But there are some high protein milks on the market that I recommend. But think of if you want to add a protein powder, dry milk powder could be something that's really easy and it's very affordable.
Excellent. Question to the audience. Before I put the cilantro on there, is there anyone that doesn't like cilantro? Let me know. Does this make you nervous? Is that are you still with us? Apollo, are you still with us?
Are you tasting soap?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not, but a lot of us do. So this is the finished soup. I realized I was going to use the blender twice, food processor once. I didn't want to wash it out between things. The great thing is when you make all these recipes, you don't have to make them all at once. You can just go ahead and just make the soup, sit back, relax, enjoy the soup, do your thing, make the pasta, make the chicken. This is just something to add to your Rolodex of meals that would work for you and your friends and your caretakers and yourself. But this soup I did want to show you is a stunner. Visually, it is just gorgeous. Can you see how orange that is? I mean, it is. I don't even know what to compare it to, except I guess the carrot, but it is so orange, it is so vibrant. I'm very attracted to it. Going back to like colors and seeing things and being attracted to that, other than farmers markets, I do remember seeing a Red Lobster commercial. It's like deep fried, fish, which is brown, deep fried popcorn shrimp, which is brown, 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 brown. And then you had a parsley sprig, which was green. And that was the one thing I was actually visually attracted to. So you've got a lot of really beautiful colors going on right here.
Thing, right?
And I have one more thing. I have a dessert or a snack. Let's think of it as a snack, shall we? Okay.
And DDF threw out there for everyone watching, what is your go-to meal? When I was recovering, I lived on butternut squash soup with a teaspoon of MTC oil. And the
Oh, I
and
talked about it before. Yes. Oh my gosh. Please, if you have a hard time maintaining your weight, MCT oil can be a wonder. Wonder.
fantastic. Elizabeth said my go-to in the beginning was baked sweet potato.
Ooh, yum.
Yeah.
Yum.
I love baked sweet potato.
And then DDF cilantro isn't my favorite, but I'll eat it sparingly in soups and salsas.
There we go.
So what is your final?
So our final, before we pull the curtain, this is the final thing. It's a little snack. It's a little bite. These are peanut butter bites, but they're a little bit crunchy. I have just plain organic rice, puffed rice. And the reason I'm using this is because it stays crispy for a very long time. Mary Eve, I would love for you to speak to whether you could use something like a cornflake with like a no sugar cornflake. But there's only 4 ingredients. I have peanut butter, I have maple syrup, I'm using oat flour. You can also use your favorite protein powder. We've done it with that as well, depending upon what you would like or dislike. And then the puff cereal. Mix it together. I'm going to roll some balls. Love to answer that question as far as what you would use for your crispiness.
Yeah, so this is so funny. I was in my infusion suite not long ago, and I heard this, Mary Eve, and I turned around, and my my patient held up his little baggie with all the protein balls in it. He's like, they go
Oh.
everywhere with me now. Like, they're so fun because you can do so many things with them, right? So you could put dry milk powder in there. That's going to help.
Yeah.
You could add definitely Rice Krispies. You could dried fruit, cut up dried fruit if you could do that. Coconut could go in there. Warm spices could go in there. So whatever, yeah, you could just play. And I love the idea of puffed Rice Krispies, maybe. Could also be an add-on. So yeah, have the base of the nut. It could also be almond butter. It doesn't have to be peanut butter, right? So some type of nut butter. Something's going to add sweetness. Coconut, maple syrup, vanilla can also be added. Dry milk powder or protein powder, and then play with all the other different things. Mini dark chocolate chip.
Yum, yum. Oh, he's frozen.
I think you mean carob, don't you mean carob?
Dark chocolate has antioxidant properties to it.
Okay.
And the mini chips could go in there. So, oh my gosh, love this so much.
So
Love
Mary, you bring up well, I mean, chocolate's one of my favorite things, but you bring up a question that Sarah and I were talking about yesterday, which is sugar levels. I know sugar's not something that patients should have a lot of. Really, all of us shouldn't. But we are using maple syrup, so it isn't just making it sweet, it's actually giving it some complexity. You don't have to use as much sugar. Is there like a limit that we should think about as far as grams of sugar that we should have per day? I'm just gonna go ahead and roll a couple of these. That's what they'll look at. Keep them in the fridge.
So that's a great question. In the cancer world, there is not. The only professional medical organization that gives a recommendation is actually the American Heart Association. And it's 36 grams per day for men.
It's a lot. Okay.
24 milligrams a day for women. And that's added sugar. But I love the thought of honey and maple syrup because they come with health properties with them. Again, they come from the planet. A bee makes it, a tree makes it. So if you wanted to add sweetness to something, I love the honey and I love the maple syrup idea. And then if you are having added sugar, it's those recommendations from the American Heart Association.
Beautiful.
More than I thought.
The phrase time flies when you're having fun, it always applies to us. I just think and we're so graced that the fact that you would all join us from around the world, ask these wonderful questions, help me become a better chef. Mary Eve Brown, your time is just like your weight in gold. So thank you so much for your knowledge. Thank you, Sarah, for relaying these questions and being in charge of the computers and the questions and the different screens and cameras. Of course, thanks to Debbie's Dream Foundation for allowing us to participate and be a part of this thing that's so much greater than all of us. But none of this would really happen without the sponsors, everybody. Make sure you eat really great food that comes from the earth, as Mary Eve Brown would say. And I'm going to go ahead and just zip off stage left. We will see you soon. Keep those questions coming. Chef Nathan Lyon through all social media platforms. And I'm going
Dietician Foundation on Facebook and YouTube.
And there we go.
All Instagram and all the things.
It is a really tight-knit community. And thank you for allowing Sarah and I to be a part of it. Okay. And thanks to the sponsors, which you will see right now. Stick around and we will see you next time. Mary Eve Brown, have a good day. Everyone out there, love you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.